Hey guys, welcome back to the Honestly Jess show. I am your host, Jess, and today we're going to be having just like a proper life chat because I have a podcast that I'm working on, but there have been some big life changes for me over the last few days, and so I haven't had the time to devote to this podcast topic that I really wanted. But next go around, we'll be talking about discipleship in the church. We're going to touch on it a little bit today, but just more intentionally deep in the next episode, kind of getting into the weeds of some ideas that I have that I'm just kind of just fleshing out on my own accord. They're not tied to like any particular movement or anything that I see, just learning a little bit of church history for myself and trying to apply it to today. But what I want to talk about in this live chat is really something that the Lord has been teaching me in terms of trusting Him with exactly what's in front of us. And I wanted to do a really honest storytelling of like how I got to these life changes that are happening right now, because it's interesting. I am getting ready to change jobs in the next couple of weeks. And I last year had this like really strong sense of like, oh my gosh, I want to leave my current job. There's a lot going on. I feel overwhelmed. Like, Jesus, I really need you to make this clear. Like, please. I was looking for any way out. And I got a specific date. And in my gut, I kind of felt like it was supposed to be a year from then. And I was like, no, I really want to leave now. Like, please, please, please get me out. And so I sat and I waited, and the date was August 10th. And so here I am, like, I was praying about it. It was the 4th of July, 2024. I had taken the day to just fast and pray and seek the Lord and worship and just like spend a serious 8-hour chunk of time before I went to hang out with friends for fireworks, to really pour over this like need that I had in my life. And in that time, I got the date August 10th. And it was one of those moments where I was like, August 10th this year, like, Lord, that's literally right around the corner. I see nothing on the horizon. Like, that would be crazy. Do I just turn in my notice on the fly? Like, I was starting to question all of these things. And then I got the like kind of little sense of like a year from now. And I was like, no, I would really love to just be done now. And I was just so overwhelmed with a lot of things that were happening. But some friends were like, you don't have anything like lined up. Like, do you want to just like go work at Chick-fil-A or a grocery store? Like, because, at least at that moment in time, that would have been better than my current job. And I was like, no, I don't really want to do that. So I waited. And then if you have been around the States for any length of time, or myself, we had a hurricane here in September of last year. And so it was really pertinent that I didn't leave my job. And honestly, in the span of time between me fasting and praying about it, receiving that date, and then getting to where we are now, I have actually seen the Lord fulfill a lot of things that I didn't even necessarily know I was praying about and praying for. And He definitely teaches us and grows us and stretches us no matter where we are. And so what's been really cool is that at my current job, I've had a chance, because I stayed, to get to know a lot of the kids who are there way better than I had even before the hurricane. Like, one of the things about having a massive natural disaster hit where you live as well is that you tend to have to get really close to the people who are around you really fast and really like learn to work together. And shout out to the people of Western North Carolina, across the region that's Western North Carolina. They pulled together real fast, and people overall have been gracious and kind and loving to one another, banded together, still banding together even almost a year after the storm, which is also crazy to think about. But that opportunity where I work allowed me to be really present with some people who I hadn't been before, allowed me to forge new relationships, to shore up relationships that I already had, and really just showed me that I had such a blessing of a job and really got to be the hands and feet of Jesus in a different way than I was used to. And I think that's just because if you're anything like me, if life feels sort of mundane, you kind of hate it. Because what I have encountered is that there's been this like undertone of, if your life's not exciting, you're doing it wrong. And I think culture's starting to push back on that, both in the church and outside of it. But there's been this, what feels like pervasive ideology that like we need to always be expecting God to do something big. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And that if you're not like having this emotional connection with him about where you're at in your life, then you're doing something wrong. And the reality is that I personally, I'm going to say the reality like as a sweeping notion, and then I'm going to make it more personal. God doesn't speak loudly to everyone. God doesn't speak loudly to me, at least loudly in the sense of what we might consciously assume his loud neon sign that we pray for speaking to be. Sometimes he absolutely drops like a bomb in your life, per se, of like, there's someone I know who she was needing to get a surgery that would have been really serious for her, but she prayed. She was like, Lord, if this isn't the time to do this, like, please let me know. Well, then her husband had something happen and she was like, okay, heard, like, I can't take care of him if I'm not able, to move. And so she prayed and she waited, and she's going to delay her surgery. Doesn't mean she won't get the help that she needs to. And a lot of people have poured into their lives and come around them to support them. So it's like, that's the Lord speaking super loudly to her. And she even said, she's like, God speaks loudly to me and I'm going to listen on the first go. I'm like, that's incredible. I don't get those type of moments with the Lord, not usually. And so for me, oftentimes it looks more like, I was praying one day I needed to go to TJ Maxx to get some sunscreen. And it was the place I had found this one that I use, like, I don't know, it had been like a year before. And I was like, Lord, it'd be really great if this brand of sunscreen was here, because I don't know where I'm going to find it because I haven't seen it online. Lo and behold, I walk into TJ Maxx, I go straight to the section I need to, and boom, there's one there. One singular one. And I was like, what the heck? Like, thank you, Jesus. That's crazy. And so here I am again, now sitting in this place where my life is both like painfully but like boring and mundane and like the same, but also getting ready to shift into honestly a like slower pace of life, which I'm kind of excited for. And I was talking to a friend through a voice note. I was like, I am really trying to embrace this idea of being bored. And the job I'm getting ready to shift into, there's just not a lot of opportunity to be on my phone or on a screen or do anything like that, which is fine. But I know that I'm going to get bored fast, and not like creative bored. I'm going to get bored as in like, let me see something on a screen. Let me get the dopamine hit that I'm not even paying attention to, of like scrolling through a colorful video or like watching stuff come across the screen and like hear the cool audios and all these sorts of things. And like, as someone who's creative and clearly producing content and like trying to navigate this space and figure out what this looks like for me, I realized that there's something within my spirit that craves the like slowness, but also craves story. And so I think that's why, for me, a very like simple, mundane, everyday looks pretty much the same type of living is really hard for me. And I've been recognizing that and realizing that it's kind of a blessing, because I get to work out my desires and hopes for something that's kind of like more fanatical or fast paced or whatever, through writing myself. And I need to be better about actually writing. I am definitely that person. I feel like I've mentioned this before. I'm like so type AB. I can be really type A about a lot of things. And usually when it comes to travel or like when I'm helping other people, I can be type A to help them get through their stuff. And then when it's me, myself, and I that needs to get through something, we're type B all the way. There's not even a shred of type A within me if I have to get myself together to do something. And that, I don't know if it's ADHD or something else. I should probably get checked for that, because it feels like everyone and their mother who's my age is like getting ADHD or being diagnosed with it. And I don't mean that in like a rude way. I mean that in like it just seems to be happening more and more. So I hope somebody's studying the sociological aspects of that. It won't be me because I don't have a degree in that. I'll just be making my assumptions on the internet along with everyone else. But when it comes to things like writing, because I do have a handful of book ideas like up in my noggin, even producing podcast stuff. Actually, this new job opportunity is going to give me a chance to have more time to put actual like more effort and like more intentional effort into especially the research side of this stuff, because I also can't just like half-ass it. Like I can't. I want to like full ass the research and make sure that it's something that I'm really proud of, and I really want to produce stuff that's quality and that blesses your life. And that in turn blesses mine just by being able to put it out there and interact with people, because people are my first calling. Like I love people, I love being around people, I love hearing their stories. And that kind of comes back to this whole thing of me realizing that, like, oh, stories really important in my life. Not just experiencing stories sometimes when I'm with people, but telling stories and helping facilitate stories in other people's lives. Because if we step back and we look at life as a whole and what we're called to do while we're here on earth as a whole in this form of story, we see that. And I was talking about this with someone at a coffee shop, because if you haven't noticed already, I'm always talking to somebody. I'm always talking. But our calling, and this is as Christians specifically, our calling isn't to a like tangible thing that the church sometimes confuses calling. I think we say, oh, I'm called to preach, or I'm called to be a banker on Wall Street. I'm called to be a missionary in the like uh I don't know, jungles of Indonesia or something like that. And you might be called to do that, but you're not necessarily called to only that. And sometimes we try and, like, I think, pinpoint a destination or pinpoint an idea that we're like, I'm called to that. When really, the thread that's running through all of those things is that we're called to Jesus and to love Jesus with our whole hearts, with our mind, with our strength, with our souls. And as we are getting closer to him in heaven and hopefully growing and learning and just being in his presence, and I say this as someone who is the chief of struggling to read her Bible and being really intentional and not coasting her way through life. Hey, hi, hello, anybody else? Like, God understands our seasons, and I think that he's really gracious in how he keeps us. But I'm learning more and more to just take the time to be with him, even if it means turning down my radio or choosing to listen to worship music instead of country music or something else. But anyway, back to this analogy. We're called to Jesus. And so all these things that we do along the way to heaven while we're here on this earth for however long we're here, like, those are just doors that we're walking through. Because in her case, she's a missionary and she's explained to people, she's like, I'm called to this specific place, but in this moment, but like my visa to this place could be denied. And so would that mean that I'm not doing what I'm called to do? Would it mean I'm in sin or something like that because I'm not listening to the Lord? No, no. It just means that the door to that has closed. And so God is going to open another avenue that still keeps me on the same path of my calling to be with Jesus, to love Jesus, to know Jesus, and all of the above. And so I was like, dang, that speaks so clearly to me and so personally to me because of my own situation right now. I've had the itch to get back overseas so bad. It's crazy. And it was wild because I had this moment where a friend of mine from London had texted me and asked if I was going to be over there for one of their evangelism summer camp things. And I was like, no, tickets like are normally super expensive. I genuinely don't have the money. Like, I would love to come, but like I'm thinking probably, at least at this rate now with my job switch, I probably won't be over there until like summer next year. Maybe my birthday, it just depends on what ticket prices look like. And I thought my classes that I'm going to be teaching, because I'll be teaching with the homeschool co-op this year, which I'm super excited about, were going to be started already because this camp is in like the middle of August. And so for kicks and giggles, one day I just decided I needed to log into my teacher portal for the homeschool thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, the classes don't actually start until September. I was like, that's crazy. I thought they started in August. And then I went and I checked tickets to London from where I live, and they were like $600 round trip, which is unheard of over the summer, let me tell you, because like last year and then the year before, they were a grand or more easy. And I was like, what in the hey is going on? Because I was like, I got the PTO. I was like, I could hop on a plane and go tomorrow. And I realized though, as I looked at it, because I was like, someone gonna have to talk me off a ledge. Like, I'm finna buy a ticket that I don't need to buy. I realized, I was like, that's actually just like scratching an itch of something that is like a deeper symptom. And I need to be sitting here addressing stuff with the Lord about why do I want to go back and do that? Because actually making that choice to buy that ticket to go this year would have put me back financially to like in terms of the goals that I have, because I want to be able to go back over and visit for like a month or a month and a half. And if I just booked a ticket because it was $600, but then needed to pay for a place to stay and some other things and ended up spending like, a grand or 1,200 or whatever, like money this go round, I've just dug myself into a hole and I can't go back and visit for a long term for like another 2 years. And so it's like, why do I want to go? What am I chasing over there that I'm trying to avoid dealing with here? And it's been painful, to say the least, to sit with this with myself of like, what am I doing? Like, do you ever just sit there and like stare at yourself in the mirror, or just like you're driving somewhere and you're just like, what am I doing with my life? Like, I don't care if you're well established in your job, or you are like in school, or you're on the hunt for something. Are you happy with your life? Like, which is amazing. And I am happy with my life. I know it sounds like I complain a lot. I'm just a heavy processor all the time. But like, have you ever just driven and been like, wow, what am I doing with my life? Or like, what am I doing here? When you just like have this overwhelming sense of like your smallness in the grand scheme of things, and you're like, literally, what? Like, what the heck? I've had that moment so many times over the last few weeks, and really have had to take a deep breath and kind of reckon with myself about, why do I feel that way? Like, what have I been trying to avoid in like being at home and staying in the States and doing these things, getting my finances in order, being mindful at my job, like taking care of the people that I'm called to take care of and steward right now who are in front of me at this job, figuring out church, all of these things. Like, what am I doing with this? Or what am I not doing with this? What do I not need to take on as an extra burden that actually belongs to someone else? And what I've really found is no concrete answer. Genuinely. Like, the only thing that I've figured out in the last like few weeks of me really pondering this sort of stuff is that I've just got to take it slow. And I am so unable to rush the process. It's not even funny. I can't remember if I said this in my last podcast episode, because I'm trying to remember when I had my last call with my counselor. But we were talking about at the time it was just a potential job opportunity, but now what will become my current job in the next few weeks. And then we were talking about relationships and just life in general and all this sort of stuff. And she was like, Jess, she's like, you're always waiting in some capacity. And we've had this conversation before, but she's like, I understand that maybe it feels more frustrating because you start to reckon with the reality that like you're not driving the ship. Like, she gave me two different analogies, and I like both of them. One, because I'm very drawn to water, and one was like about being on a boat, and the other one was about being on a plane. And I love flying and I love going places. So I was like, she knows me so well. She should. It's been almost 10 years that I've been in therapy. But the boat analogy spoke to me even more than the plane. So I'll explain both of them. With the boat, she was like, actually, let me start with the plane. She's like, Jess, she's like, sometimes you get on a plane and you're sitting on the tarmac for a while. You're looking around. You're like, when are we ever going to go anywhere? Like, what the heck? And she's like, and you could get up and get off the plane, but eventually that plane is going to leave the airport and it is going to go to its next destination. And you can either wait in the airport for another plane to come and you never know when it's going to get there, or you could stay on that one and wait. And as you get up into the sky, like, you begin to see the bigger picture because you're flying over all this stuff and you're like, wow, this is crazy. This is starting to make sense. I get it, whatever. And you're always with people. You're shoulder to shoulder with somebody on that plane. You are developing relationship, typically. On that plane, we're going to pretend that like we actually chat to people who are beside us on the plane. I don't. Headphones on, noise canceling. I'm just trying to sleep. Um, but the point is, you're waiting in the air with a group of people, and everybody's still got their own unique story in each seat. But you're all in it together and you're all going to this next destination. Now, some people will get off of this plane and go to a different one. Some people will actually stay on this plane until it departs from the airport and goes to its next destination. Or this might be its final destination. And so they're just going to get off and they're going to go to where they're supposed to go. But every time there's some form of waiting and there's some form of relationship building that happens in the waiting process. And there's both a increase in what you can see and a decrease in what you can see when you're on the plane. Because if you're just sitting on the tarmac, you can't see anything but the, world outside your window right there at the airport. And it looks like you're not going to go anywhere. But then you get up, up, up into the sky and you can see a ton of things. Like you're above the clouds. You're like, wow, everything is so big and beautiful, whatever. And then even as you descend, like you can see things, but they're really small. You don't have a full up close detailed picture. You just have an overview. And so all of those things are lacking some part of the story. They're lacking some level of detail or information. And so if we're super focused on what we're lacking, we can't see what we have in front of us or with us in the moment. And I was like, wow. I was like, that's a great story. And that's a great analogy. And it's really good for me because I'm so bad at waiting. But the truth is, we're all waiting for something all the time. Might as well get good at it. And at the same time that that's true, we can also be frustrated in the waiting. I think there's a tendency or temptation to feel like we have to perform in our relationship with God and we can't be fully honest with him. And I think that we should be careful with our hearts because we don't want to become irreverent. I also know that the Lord understands us far better than we do. And I fully believe that he'll convict us if we're getting to a place where we're starting to become irreverent and, borderline heretical. And having good biblical community around you helps that too. But to the point about trust and about being frustrated with how things are going and how the wait is happening, the boat analogy, and I didn't think of like a cute yacht or anything like that. My boat analogy involves more of like a Pirates of the Caribbean style boat. I think like Spanish Armada. We're like, yeah, ye olden times boat. Because I just wanted something more dramatic than like a yacht. That's just too glitzy for me. But anyhow, and the captain. Anyways, let me just finish the analogy. So she's like, you're on this boat. You are not captaining the boat. You are here. You can run from side to side to like look out over the ocean, but like you ultimately don't know exactly where you're going. The captain knows where you're going and he is steering you towards that port. And every boat has a port. Every boat has a dock. It is going to go somewhere. It has an end destination in mind. And so as I was taking that analogy and just kind of like running with it personally, I was like, you know what? I kind of feel like a little kid who's just like leaned up over the side of the boat and is just like staring out into the expanse and is just visualizing what she would love for her life to look like and what she sees out on the sea, kind of getting one of those weird like ocean mirages or whatever. And she's just like all up in her brain about what she thinks it should look like. And then she just kind of like blinks her eyes and realizes that that's not what's there. And she's like, so mad. Like, I can't believe this. Like, it's just taking forever. Or like, I wish we could just get there faster. I wish someone would say something like, ugh. And then just kind of having this pouty attitude and just like hanging over the side of like, when are we ever going to get there? Like, bleh. And so, because I'm actually just like a pouty child on the inside, I guess. God really has to put up with a lot of attitude from me, frankly. But I also had this like innate sense of like, but the person who's the captain of this ship really cares about where I'm going. And I can still go up to him and him even be like, here, put your hands on the wheel and let's steer it together. Like, he's not trying to keep my destination from me. He just is just trying to get me there. And there is some level of trust I have to have with him. And even if I'm frustrated, like, I can't get off the boat. Like, unless I'm just trying to drown, which I'm not, like, there's no point in getting off the boat because I can't get myself back into it. Like, if I am out at sea and I jump off some Pirates of the Caribbean style boat, like, I can't climb back up that thing. Somebody's going to have to throw a rope down to me and be like, hey, hold on. And I've got to hold on while they haul me back up into the boat. So I'm not going anywhere. And that's the like crazy part about being a Christian that I feel like I have talked about a lot, but I still don't hear a ton of people talk about is like, there are so many times where I'm like, if I didn't know Jesus, I would have jumped ship. Like, I would have jumped off the dang boat and been like, I am out of here. I don't want to deal with any of this. I am sick of it. Like, let me just go live my life and run rampant, whatever. But I physically cannot. I physically can't leave. Like, even in my darkest moments where I'm like, I don't understand why you're still here with me, God. Like, I feel like I'm messing it up. I feel like I'm not good enough. I just don't know what your deal is. Like, why are you still here with me? But like, I also can't leave because there is that little part of my spirit at all times. And I praise God that it's there. That's like, there's truth here. There's love here. There's grace here. You're going to see it one day. Like, just stop fighting. Just stop fighting to like figure it out and just experience it. Like, I don't have to explain it in order to experience it. There's a good time for both explanation and experience on their own. They're even better when they're together. And so that's what I have been sitting with and like wrestling through. And I'm checking the time because I'm like, I don't want to run over too long and just like a rambly rant like this. But I really want to encourage you if you've been in any strange spot kind of like that, where you're just like frustrated with where you feel like God is taking you, or you're just frustrated, you feel like God's not taking you anywhere at all. You feel like you're actually just like stuck on the tarmac, unable to move, or you're just like sitting out at sea waiting for a breeze to pick up the sails to take you on, whichever analogy works better for you. There is purpose, and it's cliche for a reason. I hate cliches and I love them. I use them all the time. But there is a purpose. And I think the way we find that is actually fighting a lot harder to stay in the present and to stay in the unknown. That's terrifying to me. I would love all the answers, would much prefer to have a fully mapped out like guide to how I'm supposed to get to where I'm supposed to go. It doesn't work like that. And taking a deep breath and just being like, I can only deal with today. I can only deal with today while still praying for tomorrow. That is the only way we're going to be able to move forward. And oftentimes the only way we can really be with ourselves enough to be like, okay, this is where I'm struggling with God. Let's talk about it. This is where I'm hoping that like he'll really pull through and I'm not seeing anything. Let's talk about it. And I fully believe that God meets us in those moments. So I don't know if any of that's encouraging. Like, if anything, like, just know that if life sucks sometimes, you're not alone. And the real kicker is, as Christians, and if any of you have been in a position where like you've really struggled with church specifically, and you've struggled with the people at church, and this place where you're supposed to be welcomed and you're supposed to be cared for, and this body is supposed to see you and to call you up and to be gentle and to be intentional with your growth and all these other things, and you've been hurt by them, I understand that frustration more than you know. And I understand that frustration, especially coming from a place of someone who has a really intense like desire and drive to see justice done. I also really, really want to encourage you to not give up on Jesus and the community that comes from a local church body just because of poor treatment in churches. The fight to find a good church may take you a really, really, really long time. And just remember that like church also doesn't necessarily mean a full-on institution that has like a cute little sign out front that's like, bless your heart, Proverbs, such and such, like, have a great day, or whatever other catchy slogans people put out on church signs. Because honestly, sometimes church signs, they hit. They're great. But don't give up on local community. Everybody has been hurt in some capacity. And I think that, like a lot of things in life, the loud minority of people screaming from pulpits or people hurting people in churches, they are not the majority. But the rest of us aren't speaking up and speaking out. And that's a problem that we'll have to deal with the Lord. And so I just want to encourage you that, like, you can find a place. It's hard. Before you start to look again, just spend time with Jesus intentionally. Ask him to turn your heart to, like, want to be in church again and to be soft enough to not be resistant to the sin that you're going to encounter when you come into another church. And what I mean by be resistant to the sin is be resistant to being present in a place where sin is, because guess what? It's everywhere, including in the church. And at some point, we have to humble our own selves and go, Lord, what do you want to teach me here? How do I not put up with abuse? How do I not put up with like spiritual abuse? How do I not put up with false teaching? How do I not put up with just poor attitudes of people who either aren't being shepherded well or they have their own problems that they're dealing with? Like, honestly, being a Christian is no joke. Like, it is no joke to be in the family of God, because we are called to forgive. And that is incredibly painful. So I say that as someone who's preaching that to herself, but there will come a day, whether we get to see it or not, where we will be in communion with the saints and we will be joyful, and it will be a blessing to be with all of them. And it can still be a blessing here on earth. I do believe that there is a time and a place for the local church, and it's now. And it doesn't mean that, like, you can't go to a mega church, but man, would I encourage you to find a small group of people that you can just start something with. One of the most church-like experiences of my life was when many years ago, some friends got together. We were like, we're going to study the word. We're going to eat a meal. We're going to sing some worship songs. And, like, that's going to be our time meeting together. We still met corporately. We all went to the same church, but that in and of itself, that was church. And I think we need to challenge ourselves about what church looks like. So if you felt hurt, call up your friends who've also felt hurt. Be like, hey, I don't want to go to a normal church, but I want to talk about Jesus. Can we sit and have some hard conversations? Can we, put up a bonfire in the backyard and, like, cook some burgers or whatever, and then all just sit around and talk about our feelings in Jesus and the deep things and what we feel like we can't talk about in church and all that? That is a blessing. And you will probably bless someone else by coming forward first and being like, hey, this is something that I need for my own spiritual life. You'd be surprised how much that will impact people. So I've already rambled like 15,000 minutes longer than I meant to. So until the next episode, well, I guess all the normal things, anything pertinent will be in the show notes. There will be nothing pertinent in the show notes today. My Instagram will be in the show notes. I guess you can consider that pertinent. But yeah, until next time, y'all be good.